Oh, we're live. We are live. Hi, it's Valerie. Got the bossa nova on my mind because last night was an evening of sound for me, and I found this great bossa nova track of covers. I like bossa nova. I like the bossa nova at times. Most of it worked. Some of it not so much. Some of the covers, I think you should leave good music the way it is and try not to mess around with it, but some of it did work. I'm coming live to you because I was tagged. I've been tagged a couple of times by some people, some friends, to ask me a question about burnout after the SBS Insight episode on burnout. So I did say in my reply to my friend Cara Martin that it's kind of a really big question that requires an adequate answer. So I'm taking my time today. If you want to know my thoughts as to what is the big deal with burnout and why are we burning out and why are people as young as students burning out, this is the video to watch. So, just two more shares. And then I shall answer you, Cara. I'm sure there's a more automatic way to do this. I'm pretty sure there is. Okay, last share. Okay. So, this is my most comprehensive attempt to answer the question. Why are we all burning out? Why has it reached epidemic levels? Well, my answer to that is it is not only epidemic because there are psychological questions to be answered, there are also sociological questions to be answered and probably anthropological questions as well. And I don't mean that lightly, I'm not going to talk about it, but I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not only an epidemic, it's systemic, right? And what I want to say is that the previous antidotes to burnout, where it was fairly domain specific, even people specific, largely in the workspace, largely with people who were finding themselves caring for other people. The way that we handled burnout in times past was to get on a cruise ship, right? Go for a cruise, get some perspective, come back and things will be better. So what I want to say is we can't get on a cruise ship right now. We actually have to get on a battleship. Just getting started. Right, we have to get on a battleship, okay? And here's the reason why. I'm going to draw some pictures as to why we need to take this seriously. So at the heart of it, burnout was conceptualized as a work issue, okay? Coming with some 6 areas that were out of whack. Sense of autonomy and control, fairness, reward, work type, workload. And typically, what tends to be looked at when we get on our cruise ship is to navigate or negotiate the workload that we have. Now, what we know of burnout today, however, is that even if you're not working, even if you're not in a caring profession, you might be a parent, you could be a year 12 student, you could be 8, and you would be burning out. Now, let's not roll our eyes at this, because essentially burnout is about being in a state of chronic stress. Right, there's a physiological component to it. You sit in stress and there's no resolve from it, and your physiology is changing. And now we even know from emerging research that your brain is changing as well. And this is why I think we need to get on a battleship, because we are going to lose the next generation if we don't do something about this. Burnout right now, I think, sits above that. It sits in a space called sense of self. Yep. how we see ourselves, where we get meaning, where we get our identity, how we evaluate ourselves, the references that we use to actually see ourselves, and, you know, puppet on a string, what controls that, or what mediates that, or what impacts that. And when all things are going right, a sense of purpose impacts our sense of self. Okay? So a little bit like a puppet on a string, it depends on who's holding the controlling manual remote of your sense of self. If it is one part, not totally, if it is actually managed and moved by a sense of purpose and meaning, then your sense of self is calibrated. It moves towards a direction. If, however, that changes, and I'm going to maybe take another color and write the burnout picture of it, then we start to actually burn ourselves. So our sense of self then flows on to how we interact with our work environment, our work relationships, how we interact with our personal relationships, and also how we interact with what I call the hygiene factors. That's your typical self-care stuff, right? Sleep, exercise, eat well, and all of that. Your personal stuff are your relationships, you know, what you do outside of, like, to express yourself, how you connect with your community and things like that. It all boils down to that. Now, typically, in the past, burnout literature has looked mainly here because it was a work phenomenon. And my argument is the reason why we need to get in battleships is because it's infecting us here. Just going to take another color and explain this. So, what tends to happen at a systemic level of burnout, which is what we're seeing. Oh, I need to draw another bubble, sorry. Then, around that, if you draw that, right, are the external things that impact that system. Right? Now, typically, if you look at the Australian Bureau of Statistics, what are the top stresses in Australia? There are 5 things really. Our health, our mental health, finance, and some other things, right? Some 5 things that essentially have escalated in stress for society these days. That is a whole nother big video to explain why that is happening. So the things that impact us, what's happening in our family, the degree of physical health, mental health, you know, financial stresses, cost of living that are impacting us, then pushes in on this system, if you like. Okay, so that was very important to say. So what happens now at a systemic, endemic state of burnout, and why it's happening everywhere, is because what happens is this gets disconnected. We no longer know why we're waking up at 6 o'clock other than we can't get back to sleep. We get reactive in this space. In other words, we're just attending to what's right in front of us, the demands right in front of us, and really this gets cut off. There is no longer a sense of higher order structuring for our purpose, our meaning, the reason why we're here. And what we're now referencing is our own sense of self. That's it, us, in a bubble of expectations and demands. Okay, so axe this, and now this becomes the focus. Why is the sense of self then so fragile? Well, because the sense of self is fragile because now it's on us to figure out if we're doing okay without a sense of purpose. How do I measure that? So what we know in terms of the vulnerabilities in burnout is a personality that overinvests their sense of self and their identity in their achievements, right? I know that I'm doing okay if I achieve this particular goal. But how do I actually know that that goal is okay? Well, let's reference what other people are doing. Haha, thank you, Facebook. I now have hundreds of people that I can reference to see whether I'm doing okay. All their food looks perfect. Their houses look so clean. They're zippy and peppy every morning as they put their happy posts. Obviously, something is wrong with my goal because I'm not feeling that way. So let's escalate. Now I need to make the goal even bigger. And what domains shall we look at? Oh, forget about just, whether I'm doing a good enough job. Now I need to think about how I look. Now I need to think about how my kids look. Now I need to think about whether people think I'm okay. So the referencing point has gone kaboom. Because now the borders, there are no borders. It's limitless. And so the sense of self becomes very, very vulnerable. And human cognitions are generally attuned to a negative bias about ourselves. We minimize the things that we bring to the table, and we magnify the things that other people seem to be bringing to the table. So the sense of self gets vulnerable. And you know what else I observe in my work, because we use personality testing? What I observe that's correlated then to burnout is emotional vulnerability. When this is fractured, and your referencing points are like limitless, and you don't really have a sense of why you're doing this, or really you can verbalize that and make that intellectual, and I'll come back to this, but you don't actually really understand it, your emotional vulnerability is heightened because now you're going to be attuned to helplessness. I'm not coping. I'm not doing all right. Things are breaking down. Things are not working. Everybody else has got it together. And so that emotional vulnerability goes up. And that's why people like to jump onto the resilience platform as an antidote to that emotional vulnerability. But I would suggest that the connection is here. Now, once that goes out of whack and we're feeling vulnerable and we're feeling helpless, it then impacts these areas, because it's not just about motivation. Intrinsically, it's about a profound sense of hopelessness and failure that is going to come into this space if I try to negotiate work, if I try to connect with people, if I try to get my life together. What's the point? I'm going to just come back to this sense that I'm failing, I'm not good enough. Okay? So we can try to remedy this, and it's a great thing to look at. We can try to remedy this, and that's a great thing to look at. We can try to remedy this. It's a great thing to look at. Ultimately, we need to come back here. It's not about you. Fundamentally, if you can get into the idea that that's where the vulnerability is and figure out what you need to actually stop referencing others, stop seeing the goal to seeing yourself as being a worthwhile human being and a worthwhile contributor to your work and society, if we can get to that point where we say, it's not about me, it's really not about me. It has to be about this. Has to be about this. This is the big disconnect in our society. We are more reactive than we are reflective, right? We are actually more led by opinion and clamor and noise and criticism, and we actually aren't led by an intact sense of this. Morning, Gerda. I got the bossa nova in my head, Gerda. I took some time to do that last night. 2 hours. Why? Because I was trying to get back to this. What is the point of what I do? So here is my plea. Now, by the way, if you're watching this, I actually got contacted by a student. Broke my heart. You've been on my mind. Your email has been starred as priority. I just want to take some time to actually reflect before I answer. A student reached out to me. I didn't know they were a student. They reached out to me so that they could do my burnout development plan, and it's pretty intensive. And I just could not believe that a student was reaching out to me. Okay, I'm a mum, and that just broke my heart. Now, I understand it could have been for preventative measures, but you don't, why are you thinking about it? Why are you thinking about it? We think you're the hope of our future and our generation. You are the batteries. You are the supercharged, hopeful, innovative, youthful, dynamic hope of our future. Why are you thinking about burnout? That breaks my heart. And it needs to break our hearts too. We need to get off the cruise ship and onto the battleship first, then cruise. So ask the right questions. We need to ask the right questions. We need to get out of the puddle of helplessness and referencing ourselves to the things that are broken and that are not right, to referencing ourselves, the direction that we're heading and the difference we can make and the meaning we can find in our everyday tasks, whether it's washing the dishes, folding the never-ending stream of laundry, managing a private practice that just doesn't seem to do what I need it to do. Listen to the bossa nova, waltz in, remember why we do what we do, and bring others along with it. Right. I'll see you later.